Part two, we're going to talk about the natural new year and the artificial one, okay? Because this is how life has become so artificial. Everything's artificial. Like Doho says, GMO. For real. Um, the natural new year, we said, is at springtime. This will be the time, that we like to call Aries, since that's our connectivity to this aspect, this time, this 30 degrees, this angle, this location. There's many ways to identify this energy. Right now, we're in the energy of Capricorn. The sun is, at least the sun is in that position of Capricorn. It's in that energy, in that aspect. We are following those energies of the sun. That is astrology, and that's what I was going to say. The disconnection between astrology and the actual calendar. I have to do a video on the calendar because we're not understanding that the calendar is the aspects of astrology. And if we're doing any type of planning, we're planning off of astrological factors and energies of the universe in order for us to be able to have a plan and make a plan and understanding what a plan is. So whenever we're keeping track of time through the sun and the moon, the minutes, the sun, the hour, that's using aspects of astrology. So I don't understand how that's somehow supposed to be evil when that's what we're doing every day. It's part of how we have existence and we're able to carry through time is through aspects of astrology, the knowledge of the spirit, the knowledge of the universal spirit and what we're actually doing. So the natural new year, springtime. Okay, so for some reason now it's in January 1st instead of March 21st or wherever it falls around that time, depending on the transition of nature, because nature is its own operations, its own systems, programs, and ways of working. Program systems is just ways to identify a way of being in existence and nature. All these things are interchangeable and are of the same things and just carry those energies. It's up to us individually to be able to identify those. But for somehow it's ended up in January 1st. And so when you know that this society that we built, now not necessarily we built, that was built, okay, it has systems and ways of operation in which we are willingly participants in, if that's what we decide to do based off of our will, because a lot of us don't. But in some way, we have to exist through the ways of this world in order for us to move on and carry on with our individual selves, our individual lives. So that's a good verse in the Bible. It is about being in the world and not of it. It's the same thing. There's that duality, that way of existing through something and not existing at the same time. This is a spiritual aspect that we do every day, depending on where we are spiritually, our spiritual location. Some people are very much into the systems and the operations of man instead of acknowledging the systems and operations of the universe in which we live and exist and we're able to have life, and seeing the spiritual aspect of that. So these principles are definitely known. They're studied through astronomy and astrology. They know astrology. All of their systems are built off astrology and the use of it. And they end up having their own ways and systems of doing and building. The knowledge of the spirit is very important, especially to you individually. And then you'll find your location, your spiritual location. Okay. So the natural new year is known. So for some reason, then we have to use our own judgment and own understanding based off of where our position is, our positioning in society is, and and be able to compare, reference, relate to the movement of the new year just by understanding the time of the natural principle of new and birth and new year, and then understanding how it has moved to a time of what can be considered astrologically as a time of death. It's based off of Saturn energy, because the house of the 10th house is the house of Capricorn. Saturn placement, which rules boundaries, restrictions, and limits. And when we start to understand these aspects, the spiritual side of where these placements are, then we can understand why it has moved to that particular time and how that energy is being used. But there's so much that we have to be able to identify in our own observation, because we don't necessarily spend the time to observe things anymore. Everything is so fast paced. And when things, when it comes to spirit, we know that that's something that we have to take time into. And we can observe our everyday lives, and see how when we take time into things, we get into the spirit, because that's how people become more knowledgeable of things. Like when I'm trying to just give an example of taking time, because this is a perfect example. I painted this yesterday. It didn't come out exactly how I wanted it, but then I thought it was kind of cool. But there's a statement that says a picture is worth 1,000 words. And I'm like, fuck the words. You don't even need words to read a picture. The words are already inside you, because you are the holder of the the holder of the words. You are the holder of the words, and all you have to do is look at the picture as you spend time into it, and then you'll be able to use your intuition, your inner knowing, your inner eye, however you want to identify the spiritual aspect of observing a picture and what you spiritually see. Because you see an image in your eye, but once you spend time and get into the spirit of it, get into the natures of the picture and see what you can identify. It just off top, you can identify the colors of a rainbow, and to me, it looks like an eye with eyelashes representing light and dark. But I just gave you the spiritual nature of this picture by taking time and not even using words, but I just use words to give you an example of how we come to conclusions and judgments and opinions based off of an observation. And taking time into observation is when you get into the spirit of things, when you're able to perceive things that are not necessarily what is the word, off of first glance. You might just come to one conclusion, but as you take time into looking at the picture, you get more of a perspective of everything else that's going on. So time is very important to understand, because time is represented in so many ways, and I'm going to do that too. So we have to be able to go to the source of things, and everything has a source. Everything has an origin, and understanding the origin, the root. We're not looking at the root of things or the source. We're looking at this is how we're supposed to see what type of fruit something bears. Here's another picture I did. So just off top, I don't know what people might perceive this to be. Of course, it looks like the light, the white and the dark. But it's really about the root of things, the source, in which and this also represents directions. So taking time into something is getting into the spirit of things, and people don't necessarily take the time because they're not able to identify it has to do with their spirit. So the natural new year is, like, obviously we should know, is in the springtime, time of birth, time of new. So it moved to the time of Capricorn. And then we have to be able to process the reason, the purpose, meaning, and reason of doing that. And in doing that, you're able to see a natural perspective of life and how there has been a variation to that natural perspective. And realizing that it was purposely, spiritually, purposely done in spirit. And then you identify and discern, judge of whether that was something that was done of the light or of the dark, if that was necessarily a good thing or a negative thing. And that's for us individually to decide. But this is not about the systems, because it's already in place. It's already a ritual that people participate in every year, and very comfortable and joyous of it. But people don't see their participation in these things and how they get onto a unnatural, I shouldn't necessarily say unnatural, but it's not a natural way of being. It's a controlled way of being. It's somebody else's idea of when things should be celebrated, instead of when we choose to celebrate the time of birth, the time of newness, the time when we should be connecting to that energy of the universe. The universe is saying, okay, here you go, plant your seeds, just like farmers and people who work the land know. This is the time to do things, not just as far as food, but spiritually. And we're disconnected from the spiritual knowledge of these things because through different education, religious systems. These are systems that have been taken over of natural principles through information, as we all have a natural connection to natural information. It's just how we choose and how we participate in these things. But if we can understand what nature is and understand nature within ourselves, then we can identify our placement in things and know if and judge and discern what we want to participate our energy to. So this is about the source of things. But if we want to have a better perspective of how society is working, we have to know how things started, the root, the purpose, the meaning, and reasoning, in order for us to see how it varies. There's a lot of words that we can use in this intermediary section of time of these two reference points. But we can see how things have been manipulated into the society that we have, that we're living in right now, and how that has been done over lifetimes through many different programs and ways. It just is deep. It's deep. But this is about learning the source so we can know and start observing things for ourselves, start observing our lives and everything around us in its natural state, because it's definitely necessary at this point.